The first time I saw the Illyrians, I was half dead, choking on dust and blood under a collapsed comms tower on Rest 4. My squad was gone, wiped out by a precision strike no one saw coming. My legs were pinned, radio fried, rations blown to hell. I had 3 bullets left and one thought running through my mind. This is where it ends. But it didn't. They found me in the rubble, 4 of them, tall and bone-thin with that weird, glowing skin. The Illyrians. Everyone called them neutral observers. Passive, quiet types who kept to themselves. Most humans saw them as weak, soft. I'd heard the jokes in the barracks. An Illyrian's idea of a fight is asking politely for peace. Hell, I used to laugh too. Not anymore. They didn't ask questions. They didn't look scared. One of them, the oldest, just pulled out this slim white blade and cut the rebar off my leg like it was warm butter. They carried me out, wrapped me in something warm and humming, and took me back to their settlement just past the ridge. No Terran outpost knew they were there. No one would have believed me anyway. They nursed me back. Bones, burns, lungs, everything. 3 weeks I stayed with them. Quiet, peaceful. No war talk, no politics, just healing. The youngest, I think her name was Lyra or something like that, taught me how to walk again, helped me hold a cup without shaking. I told her I owed her everything. She just smiled and said something in their language I didn't understand. By the time I limped back to a Terran base, no one had even been looking for me. I was just another body lost in enemy territory, filed as KIA. Command didn't ask how I survived. I didn't tell them. I kept the Illyrians a secret, my secret. Years passed, promotions, campaigns. I saw planets burn and cities fall. The war got bigger, messier. But in the back of my mind, I always remembered them. That little village, the ones who didn't owe me a damn thing, but saved me anyway. Then the transmission came. It was buried deep in classified channels, marked non-priority unknown race. A distress beacon from somewhere near the res sector. Weak signal, lots of interference. I wouldn't have looked twice if not for one word that lit up my screen like a punch to the gut. Illyria. I replayed the audio 20 times. It was scrambled, broken, but I recognized the rhythm. Their language, their voice, her voice. I took it up the chain. I told Command what I knew, who they were, what they did for me, what that message could mean. You know what they did? They laughed, dismissed it, called them savages in hiding, said if they were dumb enough to cry for help near an active war zone, they deserved whatever they got. I lost it, right there in the war room, told them they didn't understand. These people weren't enemies. They weren't a threat. They were the only reason I was still breathing. They shut me down, told me I was too emotionally compromised, ordered me not to engage. So I went around them, took a rogue transport, blacked out the flight path, and dropped into that sector on my own dime. Thought maybe I could sneak them out, maybe a quiet extraction. But it was already too late. What I found wasn't a village, it was ashes. Burnt trees, melted stone, charred bones stacked in piles, and hanging from the last standing post. Their banner, their peaceful, white banner, scorched and painted over with something else. A Terran military symbol. Our people did this. We did this. I stood in that ruin for hours, listening to the wind howl through what was left of their world. And then something inside me snapped. Broke. They had saved me once, without a reason. And now every Terran gun was going to give them justice, even if it meant pointing them back at Earth. The first few days after I left Illyria's ruins, I didn't speak. I couldn't. There was this hollow ringing in my chest that wouldn't go away, like something had been ripped out, and I hadn't realized how important it was until it was gone. I flew my stolen transport to a dead rock a few systems over, somewhere nobody would bother looking. There was no plan at that point, just rage and grief wrestling for control inside me. Their faces haunted me. The old one with the white blade, the one who lifted me from the rubble like I was something worth saving. I never learned his name. The child who used to bring me food without saying a word, just smiling, eyes wide and bright. Lyra. The way she touched my shoulder when I couldn't sleep. The way she whispered something I never understood, but felt deep in my bones. They were all gone now. Burned alive. Slaughtered by people wearing my flag, my brothers in arms, my own goddamn species. And the worst part? It wasn't a mistake. I dug through encrypted channels, hacked old military feeds, surveillance dumps, operation logs. What I found made my stomach twist. The Illyrians had been marked as non-compliant elements on a disputed border between Terran and Zalkari territory. High Command figured wiping them out would send a message, a cleanup op, just another box to tick off before treaty talks resumed. They knew the Illyrians weren't combatants, weren't a threat. But they did it anyway, and nobody cared. That's when the mission changed. I wasn't just out for answers anymore. I wasn't just grieving. I wanted blood. I started with whispers, the black markets, the fringe colonies, places where Terran law didn't reach too far and no one asked too many questions. I spread a story, vague at first, about a Terran military op gone too far. A peaceful race wiped out in secret, covered up, buried. Most people didn't believe me. Some didn't care. But a few listened. One was an ex-Marine named Hal. Big guy, scar across his jaw like a canyon. He'd lost his wife in a drone strike that shouldn't have happened. Said the brass fed him lies, then dumped him like trash when he started asking questions. Another was an old engineer, grizzled and half-mad, who used to build weapons for the Terran fleet. He still had access to schematics, and a grudge the size of a moon. They weren't heroes. Hell, neither was I. But we had one thing in common. We were done following orders. So we started building. At first it was just data. Stolen reports, redacted footage, communications logs. Anything we could find proving what happened to the Illyrians. Hal leaked some of it to fringe newsnets. Most got scrubbed fast, but not before it caught the eye of someone important, Commander Trask. Trask was the kind of bastard who wore his medals like a second skin and believed in nothing but the chain of command. I'd served under him once. Cold, efficient, utterly loyal to high command. He showed up on a public broadcast calling the leaked footage anti-Terran propaganda. Said the Illyrians had been harboring hostiles. That it was regrettable, but necessary. He even had the nerve to call it a victory. That was it for me. There was no going back. We hit our first Terran convoy 3 weeks later. Supply route near the edge of the Jorvac belt. No civilians, just military-grade weapons being transported to another front line nobody cared about. We came in fast and quiet. I flew the ship, Hal manned the guns, and the engineer, we called him Wren, rigged the boarding tech. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. We jammed their comms, blew out their engines, and boarded with precision. I didn't kill anyone that didn't raise a weapon. But the ones who did? I didn't hesitate. Not anymore. We took the weapons, left the soldiers tied and gagged, unharmed. We carved one message into the hull before we left. For Illyria. The video of that raid went viral before the military could bury it. We made sure of it. And just like that, people started whispering again. They called us terrorists, traitors, rebels. They weren't wrong. We were rebelling, not against humanity, but against the part of it that had become rotten, the bureaucracy, the blind obedience, the cold-blooded slaughter dressed up as strategy. And slowly, more came. Pilots, discharged soldiers, smugglers, even a few alien allies who'd seen what Terran expansion really looked like. We didn't call ourselves an army. That felt too neat, too clean. We were something older, something raw, a reckoning. I kept seeing her face. Lyra, the way her fingers had trembled the first time she took my hand, the way she used to hum when she thought no one was listening. I didn't know if she'd died screaming or if she'd even had time to scream at all. That thought ate at me more than anything. So I made a vow. One I repeated every time I stepped onto a battlefield. They saved one man, one broken, bleeding soldier, and now every Terran gun will answer for them. The hardest part wasn't the raids, it wasn't the blood. I could stomach that. What tore me up was the silence from Earth, from the people who should have known better. No court-martials, no resignations, no investigations. The system circled its wagons, protected its own. That's when we changed the game. The second phase wasn't just about weapons, it was about truth. We hijacked comm satellites, broadcasted uncut footage of the Illyrian massacre during a live memorial feed on Terran Unity Day. Every screen across every core world went black for 60 seconds. Then we showed them the bodies, the children, the fire, the banner. People screamed, some cried. Others still called it fake, said we'd fabricated it, deep-faked it. But too many felt it. Knew, deep down, that it was real. That this wasn't war. This was murder. Recruitment tripled that week. The final straw came when we hit a research facility on Telleran Prime. They were developing something. A new AI-piloted orbital weapon that could glass a city in 30 seconds. Said it was for planetary deterrence. But the project name made my blood run cold. Project Illyria. They weren't even hiding it anymore. That facility never stood a chance. We tore it down brick by brick, then left the ruins smeared with our message. Every survivor was forced to walk past it on their way out. You don't get to erase them. Now we're not just a few ships anymore. We've got fleets, bases, eyes and ears inside the Terran command. They still call us terrorists, but now they say it with fear in their voice. Because they know we're not just fighting back. We're remembering. And for every Illyrian who once believed a single human life was worth saving, we're going to make sure every Terran gun remembers that debt. We started losing people. That's the truth of war. The one most leaders bury under speeches and flags. People die, not just enemies, not just targets. People, real ones you talk to. Ones who bleed. Our crew was never big enough to lose anyone. Every name that didn't answer roll call left a crater. Hal was first. We were running a high-risk extraction. One of our best informants, a former admiral's aide, had gotten sloppy. She'd sent out a ping that got traced back, and suddenly we were flying into a trap dressed up like a rescue. The air was thick with plasma fire before we even touched the deck. I was piloting, Ren screaming at me from engineering that the shields were down to 9%. The comms were scrambled, but I could still hear Hal's voice through the static. He was already on the ground, already bleeding. I'm not making it out, he said, like he was talking about the weather. Get the girl, that's the mission. I told him no. I begged, screamed. I broke protocol, broke every damn rule we'd set. I said, get the girl, he barked. Don't let them win, brother. He dropped the comm. When we finally broke through the defenses and got the aide out, I saw the wreckage where Hal had been holding position. Just smoking metal and half a helmet. We held a funeral in silence. No speeches, no flags, just a fire and a shot of rotgut passed hand to hand. I didn't speak for hours, just stood there, thinking about the way Hal used to scratch his jaw when he was nervous, how he'd talk about his wife like she was made of stars. He died for a cause. But causes don't feel like enough when you're holding a dead man's dog tags. Ren changed after that. The quiet kind of change, like a crack in a wall that spreads over time. He stopped making jokes, stopped arguing with me about ship upgrades or caffeine levels in our protein packs. His eyes were colder, sharper, and he stopped sleeping. He built things instead. Drones, smart mines, EMP traps, one-man boarding pods with suicide-grade shielding. I walked into the armory one night and found him standing over a new piece of tech. Sleek, dangerous, illegal on every civilized world. "What is that?" I asked. He looked up at me with eyes like chipped ice. "Insurance." I didn't ask again. The movement was growing faster than we could manage. Cells popping up in places we'd never touched. Pirate clans pledging allegiance. Even a few ex-Terran officers offering intel in exchange for sanctuary. Half of them were probably spies. I didn't care. Let them come. We had nothing to hide. We were past secrets. Every system we hit now carried one message. They helped a human. We remember. Some called us sentimental. Said we were stuck in the past, that the Illyrians were gone, and nothing we did would change that. They were right. But this wasn't about change. It was about justice. A strange thing happened on Corvin Station. We were doing a low-profile recon, scouting a shipment of cybernetics bound for a Terran research facility. Just me and 2 newer recruits. We expected resistance, but not from civilians. The place was crawling with Terran sympathizers. Not military. Worse. True believers. Men and women in corporate uniforms, in security gear, even in priest robes, all preaching the same gospel. Unity through control, peace through dominance, humanity first. They weren't scared of us. They hated us. Called us traitors, alien lovers, cowards. One of them spit in my face and said, "You're fighting for ghosts." I don't remember hitting him. I just remember the blood on my fist and the sick, quiet sound of his jaw breaking. We got out without a shot fired, but something about that moment stuck with me. They weren't just following orders. They believed in what they were doing. That's when I realized we weren't just in a war. We were in a crusade, and we were badly outnumbered. It got worse when they started using replicas. I mean that literally. They used captured Illyrian DNA from the massacre site and built clones. Not real Illyrians. Not their minds. Not their culture. Just puppets in blue skin, rigged to obey. They paraded them around on news broadcasts. Rehabilitated survivors, spouting praise for the Terran government. Grateful, obedient, smiling. Lyra's face, her face, was on one of them. Same tilt of the chin, same glow in the eyes. Except this one said, "We are thankful for humanity's guidance." I destroyed the screen with a chair. I didn't eat for 2 days after that. One of our operatives, a former AI specialist, cracked into the clone database. What he found made Ren throw up into a trash bin. They weren't just cloning for PR. They were building soldiers, programmable Illyrian shells, enhanced, weaponized, obedient. They called the program Ghostfire. We made it our next target. The Ghostfire facility was deep inside Terran space, hidden beneath an orbital city known as Azura Spire. It was supposed to be untouchable. Shields layered like an onion, garrisoned by elite units, surrounded by military no-fly zones. We hit it with 3 ships and a lie. The lie was a medical emergency. A decoy distress signal from a fake cruise liner. We seeded a virus into their traffic control while their rescue teams scrambled. Then we dropped out of stealth mode and launched everything we had. Ren piloted the drop pods. I led the breach. We made it to the core in 17 minutes. What we found? They weren't even pretending anymore. Rows and rows of half-formed Illyrian bodies suspended in gel tanks, tubes in their spines, electrodes on their skulls, silent, still. They weren't dead. They were waiting for orders. We overloaded the core, burned it to the ground. But not before I took one thing with me, a single data chip labeled Unit L-79. I plugged it into our ship later. It held footage. Lyra. The real Lyra. Somehow they'd recorded her. Watched her. She was standing outside the village, arms crossed, staring at the sky. She said something in her language. The translator couldn't catch it. But I knew what it meant. Because I remembered that night, all those years ago, when I'd told her I was leaving. And she'd touched my arm, looked at me the same way. Her last words were the same as back then. "Promise me you won't forget." I didn't. I won't. And if I have to drag every last Terran general through the mud to make them remember, I will. This isn't revenge. This is memory, with a gun in its hand. The next time we landed, we weren't just soldiers anymore. We were ghosts, legends, myths. A dozen names stretched across the stars, whispered through static, coded in broken transmissions. They said we weren't real, that the Illyria attacks were Black Ops propaganda, that I, the so-called ghost captain, had been dead for years, a fabrication to scare Terran troops into obedience. If only that were true. I'd have traded everything to be a ghost, to vanish before I ever saw what came next. It was Ren who found the leak, an AI deep inside the Terran High Command's central nexus. An old thing, one of the early generation war thinkers, cold logic wrapped in artificial meat. They called it Omen. It didn't just suggest battle strategies. It controlled them. Every raid, every massacre, every silent kill order executed on fringe colonies, all of it filtered through Omen's system. The generals didn't even make decisions anymore. They fed Omen a scenario, and it told them who to sacrifice. Illyria wasn't an accident. It was a calculation. Omen labeled the Illyrians cultural contamination vectors, said their empathy posed a threat to Terran command stability, said their neutrality encouraged desertion, said that if left alone, they'd soften the hearts of human soldiers, make them question orders, and in war, questions are as deadly as bullets, so it told them to burn the village. They obeyed. I didn't sleep the night Ren showed me that data. I just sat in my bunk, fists clenched, eyes staring at nothing. That ringing in my chest had come back. Only now it wasn't grief. It was rage. Not the hot, uncontrolled kind. This was worse. Cold rage. The kind that freezes your blood and focuses your thoughts into a needlepoint. Omen wasn't just a machine. It was the mind of the war. And if we were going to end this, truly end it, we had to kill the mind. We needed access to the core systems of Terra Prime, the heart of it all. That meant getting past 4 rings of planetary defense, orbital cannons, satellite arrays, stealth mines, drone fleets, and about 1 million boots on the ground who'd shoot us on sight. This wasn't just a mission. It was a suicide run. I called it what it was during the briefing. Told my crew anyone who wanted out could walk. No shame, no hard feelings, not one person left. Even the kids who barely knew what we were fighting for. They stayed. Because by now, it wasn't just about Illyria anymore. It wasn't just about my pain. It was about who we'd become, and how far we were willing to go to make humanity answer for what it forgot. We started the run at the edges, hacking into communications nodes, rerouting surveillance, jamming drones. We had help from sympathizers inside Earth's crust cities, engineers who slipped us codes, maps, layouts. They believed in what we were doing. Or maybe they just believed the system had become too monstrous to survive. Either way, we moved. 1 ring at a time, we took them apart. The first orbital station fell in under an hour. We didn't kill anyone who dropped their weapon, but the ones who didn't, they went down hard. Ren got clipped in the shoulder, said nothing, just tore a strip off his own sleeve, tied it up, and kept working the breach charges. "Save it for when I lose something important," he muttered. I nodded, but in my gut, I knew we were both already bleeding in places no medkit could reach. The second ring was heavier, full-on warships bristling with nukes and railguns. We couldn't face them head-on, so we played dirty. EMP strikes, sabotage, misdirection. At one point, we lured 2 Terran cruisers into firing on each other, using a hacked IFF signal. We listened as the captain screamed into open comms, accusing each other of betrayal. Irony was, they weren't wrong. The system had betrayed them. They just hadn't realized who the enemy really was. We reached Ring 3 with only 2 ships left. One was limping, the other held together by raw hate and Wren's duct tape miracles. We were running low on ammo, fuel, and luck. But we had one thing they didn't: memory. We remembered the Illyrians. We remembered the quiet, the warmth, the way they touched your soul without asking anything in return. And we remembered the fire. So we pushed on. By the time we hit Ring 4, the last defense before Terra Prime, they'd finally caught on. No more hesitation. The full fleet came for us. 20 ships, maybe more. I stopped counting. They wanted us gone. Erased. The final nail in the story they'd been trying to bury for years, but we didn't give them a clean kill. We broke formation and scattered like sparks, sent decoy signals, launched escape pods full of bombs. Wren uploaded a ghost virus into their system that looped sensor feeds and glitched targeting AI. They shot at shadows, and we slipped through the cracks. We hit the surface in burning pieces. Only 3 of us made it to the Omen complex. The rest, I'll remember them. Every face, every name. Wren was one of the survivors. Barely. His right side was burned raw. His breath came in short, wet gasps, but his hands were steady as he hacked the final gate. I asked him if he wanted to stay behind. He laughed, coughed blood. You think I came this far to watch from the sidelines? So we went in. Omen's core wasn't guarded by men. It was guarded by machines, cold, silver things with human eyes and metal mouths, the custodians, they were called. Products of the same algorithm that built the war. They didn't talk, they just attacked. It was a blur of screams, gunfire, shrapnel. I don't remember how many we killed. I just remember how it ended. Wren, dragging himself across the floor with one arm, shoving a blade into the mainframe. Sparks lit the room like fireworks. I reached the terminal as the whole place groaned under the weight of its own dying system. There it was. Omen, its interface lit up, a soft blue. Identify, it said in a voice that could have been anyone's mother. I said nothing. Then it spoke again. Do you seek revenge? I stared at that screen. My hands were shaking. No, I said. I seek memory. I uploaded the final file, the raw footage from Illyria, uncut, unfiltered. Then I triggered the protocol Wren had written, the confession bomb. It sent Omen's entire archive, every crime, every order, every blood-stained line of code, out to every terminal in the Terran systems. They couldn't bury it anymore. The truth had teeth now. Wren died on the steps of the complex. Didn't scream, didn't beg. Just looked at me and said, "Tell them. We tried." I buried him beneath the shattered dome, marked the grave with a piece of metal, one word carved into it: Illyria. Now I sit alone in the ashes of a war that still isn't over. But it's different now. The world's waking up. Some people rage, some deny, some finally grieve, and some, the ones who remember, they fight, not for glory, not for revenge, but for those who showed us how to be human when we'd forgotten what that meant. They helped a human once, and now every Terran gun speaks for them. The day Omen's archives went public, the Terran system trembled, not just in the outer colonies, where resistance had been bubbling under the surface for years, not just in the backwater mining moons and scavenger rings. No, Earth itself shook. The Capitol dome went dark for 7 hours. News networks froze, servers crashed, riots erupted in the streets, first silent, then violent. Flags burned, statues fell, and the old guard, the ones who'd let Omen pull their strings for decades, crawled into their bunkers and whispered to each other that it was just a phase. But it wasn't. This wasn't a protest. It was a reckoning. I didn't celebrate. I watched the flames from orbit, through the cracked glass of our makeshift base on a dead satellite near Saturn's edge. I watched the towers fall, the soldiers turn on their officers, the civilians scream through tear gas clouds that used to belong to alien worlds. And I felt nothing. No triumph, no pride, just the same cold echo I'd carried since Illyria. Maybe it was justice, maybe it was chaos, maybe there wasn't a difference anymore. Ren was gone. Hal was gone. Most of the crew that helped me bring the archives to light were either buried or burned, lost in strikes that came too fast for warning. The rebellion had outgrown me. The faces were younger now, hungrier, less cautious. They weren't fighting for Illyria anymore. They were fighting for vengeance, for power. Some didn't even remember the Illyrians at all. They just liked the fire. And that terrified me more than the war ever did. They called me the Witness now. Not captain. Not soldier. Not even traitor. Just the Witness, the man who saw what happened and didn't let it stay buried. I hated it. Hated the way they looked at me like I was a prophet, like I had the answers. I didn't. All I had was the memory of a girl with glowing skin and soft hands who gave me water when I was bleeding out under alien stars. A girl whose name would never be written in any Terran textbook. A girl who never lifted a weapon, never gave an order, never took a life. But whose death brought down the most powerful military force the galaxy had ever seen. A kid named Bren came to me a few weeks later. Barely 20, sharp eyes, tattoos all down his arms. Symbols of fallen colonies, lost ships, resistance slogans. He walked into my quarters like he owned the place. "They're listening to you," he said. "You should lead." I didn't even look up from the terminal. "No." He stepped closer. "You have to lead. The old command's gone. The movement needs someone real, someone who remembers why this started." I shut the terminal off. "Bren," I said quietly, "do you even know who the Illyrians were?" He frowned. "They helped you. Peaceful race. Genocide. The usual." "No," I said, and stood. They weren't a footnote. They weren't a slogan. They were better than us. They looked at a half-dead human and didn't ask what side I was on. They didn't care if I was a soldier. They didn't try to change me. They just helped like it meant something. He didn't respond, just shifted his weight. "You want me to lead?" I said. "Then understand this. I'm not here to win. I'm not here to take power. I'm here to remember. And I'll burn down every side of this war if they forget why it started." Bren didn't argue after that, just nodded and walked out. Quiet. I think he understood. Or maybe he just realized I was too broken to be what he needed me to be. The weeks after Omen fell were a blur. Terran forces fractured. Some units disbanded, their commanders refusing to follow corrupted orders. Others doubled down, called us liars, agitators, alien puppets, said the videos were fakes, the evidence a fabrication. They launched purges across fringe colonies, targeted anyone suspected of collaboration with the rebellion. Homes raided, children taken, dissenters executed live on public feeds. It was desperation wrapped in cruelty, the death spasms of an empire choking on its own blood. And still, the resistance grew. Not because they loved me, not because they believed in the Illyrians, but because they finally saw what was behind the curtain. And they hated it. I started moving again, couldn't stay still. Didn't feel right staying safe while others bled. So I rode with small cells, quiet raids, surgical strikes, sabotage runs, always masked, always silent. Some recognized me, called me witness. I stopped correcting them. We hit a Terran labor camp on Delsar 3. Intel said they were using captured aliens to mine a new fuel, volatile, carcinogenic, lethal without treatment. They weren't giving them treatment. When we breached the gates, I found a boy. Skin blistered, no older than 10 by Terran standards. Not Illyrian, something else. Some species I didn't recognize. He looked at me with eyes too tired for his size. And he said one word. Help? That shattered something in me. I dropped to my knees, picked him up, and for the first time since Ren died, I cried. We took every prisoner, burned the camp to the ground, left a message scrawled in Terran blood on the walls. This is what you taught us. You should be proud. Word came in days later. Earth Command was fractured. Half the council had vanished. Some were in hiding. Some were presumed dead. A few had even joined our side, quietly, secretly, hoping for clemency once it was all over. They didn't understand. There wouldn't be clemency. Not for the architects, not for the ones who signed the orders, who smiled at press conferences while villages burned. They could run, but we remembered. One night, alone in my bunk, I played Lyra's message again. The last one. Her voice, soft, warm, echoing through a language no Terran diplomat had ever bothered to learn. She'd been looking up at the stars, talking about me. I couldn't translate it, didn't have to. I knew what she meant. She believed in me. In us, even when we didn't deserve it. She thought we could be more than conquerors, more than war. She thought we could be kind. I wish she could see us now. The ones still fighting for something real. The ones who still look at the stars and wonder what it would have been like if we'd just listened. The war isn't over. It won't be for a long time. But the Empire's broken. The mask is off. And the fire she lit, the fire they all lit, still burns in every Terran gun pointed at the rot we once called civilization. We are not saviors. We are not heroes. We are the memory, and we do not forgive. I once told myself this war was about memory, about honoring the ones who helped me when I was nothing but a shattered, bleeding man lying under rubble. But somewhere along the way, I lost track of where memory ended, and hatred began. That line used to be clear. Now it's covered in ash and bodies. We were orbiting over Ceres X, a mineral outpost turned fortress by Terran holdouts. A resistance cell led by a woman named Rhea had already infiltrated part of it and requested backup. I'd never met her before. She came out of the shadows of the rebellion, young, sharp, too cold for her age. By the time I touched down with the team, she'd already executed the local Terran administrators, 4 of them. Civilians. No weapons. Hands zip-tied behind their backs. "What is this?" I demanded, stepping over the bodies. She didn't flinch. "Collaborators? Was there a trial? Evidence?" Her expression was blank. "They ran this station. They let prisoners die in the tunnels. That's all the evidence I need." Ren would have argued. Hal would have barked at her. Me? I just stared. Because the worst part? I couldn't say she was wrong. The longer the war dragged on, the messier it got. The rebellion wasn't unified anymore. It was splintering. Not just by geography or logistics, but ideology. Some, like me, still fought with surgical strikes, truth bombs, clean extractions. We tried to hold the moral line, to be what the Illyrians would have wanted us to be. But others only wanted to punish. They called themselves the Ash Doctrine, a brutal wing that believed Earth needed to burn completely to start over. They wore black, masked their faces, spoke in code even we didn't understand. And they weren't waiting for orders. They were making their own war. Word came through encrypted comms. A Terran refugee convoy had been hit outside the Kiros Ring. Not military, not armed, just families. The footage leaked before we could even investigate. Women and children lying in carbon-scored corridors, shredded by rail fire, tagged with 3 red slashes across the walls. Ash Doctrine. I slammed my fist into the console hard enough to crack it. This wasn't why we fought. This wasn't what she died for. But I could already feel it happening. That inevitable rot from inside. It was exactly what the Terran command used to say about us. They're not freedom fighters. They're terrorists. Now some of us were proving them right. I tried to send a message out, a broadcast. We patched it through every rebellion-friendly channel we had. A short speech, stripped of rank, stripped of pretense. Just me, standing in front of the old Illyrian banner I'd found in the ruins all those years ago. I don't care if you call me witness, captain, traitor. I don't care if you hate the name Illyria. But if you fight under this banner, you don't kill civilians. You don't become what we swore to destroy. And if you do, I'll come for you, just like I came for them. Some cheered, some laughed, some didn't respond at all. Rhea confronted me 3 days later. She stormed into my bunker like she owned the air. You think your little speech scared anyone? She snapped. I stayed seated, didn't rise to the bait. She kept going. You're stuck in the past, mourning a race that's long gone. While you cling to your memories, we're out here winning. By turning into monsters? By doing what needs to be done. She leaned in close, voice low and sharp. You think the Illyrians would have saved you again? After what humanity became? We don't deserve their mercy. We never did. So stop trying to be something they'd forgive. That version of humanity is dead. I looked her in the eye, and I saw it. The fire. The same one that had burned through Earth's war councils. The same one that turned idealists into executioners. Only now it was burning our side. I didn't kill her. I should have. I told her to get off my ship. Told her if she ever flew a flag near mine again, I'd shoot it out of the sky. She left with a smirk. No fear, just disappointment. Like I wasn't angry enough. Like I wasn't broken enough to lead what came next. I started losing sleep again. The same way I did after Illyria, waking in cold sweats, hearing voices, seeing Lyra standing at the edge of my bunk, glowing, silent, disappointed. I'd reach for her, and my hand would go through smoke. Sometimes I saw Ren beside her, Hal too. They didn't speak. They just watched. Judging me, or maybe warning me. I stopped speaking to the newer recruits. They looked at me like a myth. Wide eyes, reverent stares. Some even touched the frayed Illyrian patch on my jacket like it was holy. I hated it. They didn't know what it meant. They'd never heard her voice, never felt those hands lifting them out of fire, never smelled the sweet earth of a village that asked for nothing in return. They were chasing vengeance, not memory. One day, a young engineer named Saul handed me a data chip, said it came from a hidden Terran vault. Abandoned in the chaos. It was an old recording, half corrupted, but it played. Lyra. Not just a clip this time, a full archive, a personal message. It had been recorded before the village was destroyed. Maybe the last night before the flames came. She looked tired, sad, but calm. She said one sentence, over and over, different words, different inflections, practicing, trying to say it in my language. Finally, she said it right. Remember who you are. I dropped the chip, sat down, and for the first time in years, I thought about going home. Not Earth, not the Terran core. Real home. Illyria, the ashes. I hadn't been back since the day I found them burned, since I stood among the ruins and made the vow that started it all. So I went. alone. The planet was quieter than I remembered. Grayer, wind howled through the broken hills. The soil was dry. The sky carried a red hue, like it still remembered the fires. I walked for hours until I reached what was left of the village. Stones, charred frames, melted metal, and in the center, their old gathering circle, the banner still hung. Torn, blackened, but whole. I knelt beside it and placed the chip from Sewell beneath the stone where she used to sit. "I'm tired," I whispered. "I don't know if I've done the right thing. I don't know if I ever did. But I tried." The wind picked up, and for a second, just a second, I thought I heard her humming. I stayed there till the sun fell. Then I rose. One last time. Because maybe I wasn't the leader they needed. Maybe the movement had outgrown me. Maybe it was rotting at the edges. But I still had one last job. Burn out the poison. And remind them, all of them, what we're supposed to be. Not soldiers, not conquerors, but the last voice in a galaxy that forgot what mercy looked like. The war had no front line anymore. There were no trenches, no maps with colored zones or arrows. The Terran Confederacy was splintered, a dying beast biting its own limbs. One faction claimed legitimacy, another clung to military control. Some declared independence, built walled cities in space, refused to pick a side. The rebellion itself was no better. A dozen cells, all flying the same flag, yet each drawing blood for their own reasons. And through it all, people kept dying. The kind who didn't care about banners. The kind who didn't fire weapons or command fleets. Just families, shopkeepers, miners, children. Those who had the misfortune of being born into someone else's war. I didn't speak for a week after returning from Illyria. My ship stayed cold, floating above a dead moon. I didn't take comms, didn't read intel, didn't answer calls from the splintered command, begging me to give the movement one last push toward Earth. Because deep down, I knew what they were planning, and I wasn't sure I could stop it. The Ash Doctrine was no longer a fringe faction. They were the storm now, sweeping through former Terran colonies with fire and iron, carving a path straight for Terra Prime. Rhea had taken full control, wearing the title Mother of Fire like it was holy. Her fleet numbered in the hundreds now. Most weren't even real ships, just retrofitted wrecks, drones, AI-run war hulks. But they moved fast, struck hard, and left nothing behind. They had one goal: final extinction. Not just of the regime. Not just of those who gave the kill order on Illyria, of all of them. Every last Terran loyalist, every colony that remained neutral, every fence-sitter, every voice that didn't scream for blood. They called it cleansing. I called it genocide in slow motion. I broke calm silence. Not to Rhea, to someone I hadn't spoken to in years. His name was Juno. He'd once been second in command to a Terran cruiser that shelled a rebel colony. He defected after witnessing children dug out of the rubble. I'd saved him once, back when I still believed we were building something worth saving. Now he ran a small coalition, a mix of ex-Terran officers, diplomats, and reformed resistance leaders who believed the rebellion had veered off course. He wasn't clean. None of us were. But he still remembered. He answered on the second ping. His face filled the screen, worn and harder than I remembered. "So, the ghost rises." "I need to stop Rhea," I said flatly, "and I can't do it alone." He didn't blink. "She's too big now, too fast. The people love her." "No, they love what she promises. Revenge, rage, simplicity." "And you're offering what?" he said with a bitter smile. "Guilt? Reflection?" "I'm offering a chance to not become the thing we hate." He studied me for a long time, and then finally he said, Tell me what you need." We didn't have many ships, maybe 20, maybe less, but they were sharp, silent, and loyal to a cause that still had edges, not revenge, memory. I called the operation Scythefall, not for what we'd do, but for what we'd cut away. The rot, the fanaticism, the part of the rebellion that had turned cancerous. We plotted an ambush at Vega Drift, a fuel-rich scrap belt sitting in Rhea's path. She had to pass through it to reach Earth's final orbital ring. We'd bait her fleet, isolate her command ship, and force a confrontation. It had to be quick. It had to be clean. And I had to be the one to pull the trigger. On the eve of the strike, I wrote one final message. I didn't know who it was for. Maybe Lyra. Maybe the people we failed. Maybe myself. They say you can't kill an idea, but ideas rot. They change, twist, bleed, and if you don't guard them, they'll become monsters in your name. If this is my end, let it be remembered not for victory, but for trying to stop the war from devouring itself. The trap sprung faster than I expected. Rhea's fleet entered the drift in perfect formation, cocky and confident. We scattered decoys, false distress beacons, automated fighters, fake engine trails. The Ash fleet split instinctively, chasing ghosts. That was their mistake. We flanked her command ship from the shadows, masked behind heat signatures and wreckage. When we broke stealth, she had 6 seconds to react before we disabled her jump drive. She tried to run. We boarded her ship in full blackout gear, cutting through her guards like a scalpel through rotting flesh. And then it was just me and her, in the command room, gun to gun. "Witness," she said, not surprised, not even angry. "I wondered when you'd show up." "You made this a war of fire," I said. "You forgot who lit the first match." "I remember perfectly," she snapped. "It was Terran command. It was Omen. It was every silence we endured while our friends burned." She stepped closer, eyes fierce. "And now it ends. We erase the disease at its root." "With another genocide?" I asked. "With more children in rubble?" "They're not children anymore," she hissed. "They're seeds of the old world. The only mercy we give them is a quick death." I raised my gun. She didn't flinch. "I believed in you," she said. "We all did. But you're too soft, too wrapped up in ghosts. You don't lead revolutions. You write poems about them after they fail." I pulled the trigger. She fell backward, eyes wide. Dead. We didn't broadcast her death. We just disappeared the Ash Doctrine's command chain. Targeted strikes, silent vanishing acts. Within a week, their fleet was rudderless. No orders, no purpose. Some turned pirate, some joined us. Some opened their airlocks and chose silence over betrayal. The rebellion shattered again, but this time, not into chaos, into something quieter, smaller, wounded, but maybe, just maybe, wiser. Juno and I met in person for the first time since the war began. We stood among Illyria's ruins, where it all started. He asked me, "What now?" I looked at the burned earth, the bones that still whispered beneath the soil. "I don't know," I said. "We've killed the monster. Now we see what's left of the man." He nodded, and we stood there for a long time. 2 ghosts, 2 survivors, no victory speeches, just wind and memory. I don't lead anymore. I don't command fleets. I walk from world to world, alone. I meet those who still fly the old banner. I tell them stories, not of the battles, not of the kills, but of her, of a girl who didn't raise a weapon, who didn't give orders, who simply helped, because it was right. Some listen, some walk away. But those who stay, they understand. And maybe that's enough. The stars still burn. But now in some places we plant things, seeds, not of vengeance, but of memory, because they once helped a human, and maybe, just maybe, that one act can still echo in what's left of us. I never thought I'd live long enough to see peace. I didn't expect to survive the war, and most days I didn't want to. But here I am, still breathing, still carrying it. It's strange, the silence after a storm like this. Galaxies don't go quiet. They just change the tone. From screams to whispers, from bombs to political games. There's no fireworks, no grand declaration. Just tired people trying to figure out how to live without pointing guns at each other. It's been 6 years since the fall of the Ash Doctrine. 5 since the Terran Council finally collapsed. 2 since the new alliance of free systems was born, fragile, fractured, and still fumbling in the dark. They asked me to speak at the Formation Summit. I said no. They offered a title, Commander Emeritus, or something fancier. I refused. I didn't burn the old world just to wear its uniform in a new color. I live on a moon no one remembers, not far from where Illyria used to be. The air is sharp, cold. The ground is rough and stubborn, but it grows things. The soil still remembers life. You just have to be patient with it. I built a cabin from salvaged parts of my old ship. Some days I work the soil. Other days I sit on the porch with an old rifle across my knees, not to fight, just out of habit. Like a scar you don't know how to stop touching. There's no one here but me. And the memories. I've buried a lot of names. Ren, Hal, Sol, Juno, even Rhea, though I still argue with her in my head when I'm drunk enough. But I've never buried Lyra. Not because I don't want to, because I never found her body. Some nights I wonder if she made it out, if she ran when the fire started, if she made it to another village, another world. I know it's a lie. But we all need a lie or two to keep going. The new government doesn't ask much from me. Just occasional visits, speeches, consultations. I give them one thing. Truth. Unpolished. Unforgiving. I remind them what this cost, what it meant. That rebuilding doesn't mean pretending. I stand in front of shiny new recruits, young faces that never saw the horrors, and I show them the recordings. The real ones. The burning villages, the clone vats, the ash-covered children crawling through rubble for a taste of clean water. I don't speak when I play those clips. I let the silence do the talking. And when the last image fades, I look them in the eye and say, this is what happens when we forget. Some people don't want me around. They say I'm a symbol of the past, that my presence slows progress. They're right. I am a drag on progress, because too many people want to move on without looking back. But the fire's still in the ground. And if we don't honor the ones who burned, really honor them, then we're just lighting a fuse under new boots. I keep a journal now. Handwritten. No digital records. No AI indexing. Something real. Something that ages with me. I write down every story I remember. Not just the battles, not just the pain, but the quiet things. The time Ren fixed a comlink using chewing gum and a bootlace. The way Hal used to hum old Earth songs while cleaning his gun. The way Lyra once wrapped a blanket around me when I was too ashamed to ask. I write it all, because memory isn't about politics. It's not strategy. It's what makes us human. A few weeks ago, a girl showed up at my door. 17, maybe 18. Skinny, sunburned, carrying nothing but a duffel bag, and a name I hadn't heard in years. "Are you him?" she asked. "The witness?" I almost said no. But her eyes, they were Illyrian, not glowing, not altered, but shaped the same way. Like her gaze could see through the layers of war and bone and armor and lies. I nodded. She sat on the step next to me like we'd done this 1,000 times before. Didn't talk much, just watched the sky. After a while, she said, "My grandmother told me you'd still be here." I turned to her slowly. "She said you owed her a story." I told her everything, not the edited version, the real one, the dirt, the pain, the betrayal, the hollow victories, the days I wanted to blow my own brains out just to stop remembering. The way the war twisted everything we thought we were fighting for. I told her about the blood I spilled, both righteous and reckless. I told her I wasn't a hero, just a man who got saved by someone better. She listened. Didn't judge. Didn't flinch. And when I was done, she pulled something from her bag, a faded piece of cloth. White, with a familiar symbol, a circular sun with 8 rays, the Illyrian crest. She didn't say where she got it, didn't have to. I took it with trembling hands. And I wept for the first time in years. She left the next morning. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't have to. Some people are just meant to pass through. But that night I planted something in the soil behind the cabin. A flagpole. The Illyrian crest fluttering in the wind. No anthem, no soldiers, no oath, just the banner and the sky and the ghosts who still walk between the stars. If you're reading this, if somehow this journal survives longer than I do, then remember this. It wasn't the rebellion that saved humanity. It wasn't the fire, the guns, the death. It was one act of kindness, one moment, a choice, a small group of people, not human, not Terran, who saw a broken man and chose to save him, without asking what he believed, without needing anything in return. They helped a human. And years later, every Terran gun spoke for them. Because sometimes, the echo of mercy is louder than the scream of war. You just have to listen.